Portfolio is a collection of objects or resources that demonstrates your professional growth and improvement as a teacher. It can serve as a useful place to store and curate ideas, examples, and a place for critical collection. I know as a teacher I have lots of little folios collected over the years that I go back to and adapt ideas or utilise some of my collection to in my classroom. So your portfolio should comprise of the following two parts: a compilation of a collection of artefacts, which is 15 items displayed in one photograph. Then the written section of this assignment includes observations, analysis, and reflection of your collection of everyday found objects. Your analysis needs to clearly identify and incorporate science processing skills when considering your collection, which is in essay format, 1500 words. So you're collecting 15 found objects, and the idea of collecting has been woven through this science and technology unit with the activities, the provocations drawn from the texts, particularly the text, How to Be an Explorer in the World by Kerry Smith. It's great. This assignment's an interesting way of focusing on science processing skills, fine-tuning your observation and opening up to the scientific and creative opportunities that can be found in everyday objects. So what you can include in your collection, or should. So your collection and research needs to be made up of things that you may be attracted to or interest you. So things you find personally interesting. They need to exist for free, such as natural and waste materials. Now, I'd be going down the natural path more so than the waste materials. We're not talking about, orange juice bottles and things like that, but sometimes waste materials might be a bit of packaging or, something that you would think more deeply about or maybe use with children in a scientific sense that, we don't want you rifling through your rubbish and that's your 15 items. It'd be much better if you go and look out in the environment and find things. So basically, the things you find or use or collect need to be readily available or found, not purchased. So we don't want you going out and buying things. They should be objects that you can experience in an embodied way through movement, seeing, feeling, smelling, and wondering about. So using your senses, as we would encourage young children to do. So your collection should therefore not include digital objects from the internet, like a collection of photographs. So don't just take pictures from the internet. We actually want you to physically collect these objects. The purpose of this experience is to think and research in an embodied way using your mind and body. So you need to write an account of your collection of everyday objects in a Word or PDF document using the following guidelines. First of all, as you're collecting them, make observations about your current everyday experience and reflect on the objects in your life and think about how this is embodied in your life and experience, and will work best if you do this over some time and think more deeply than colour and shape. You need to gather and create a collection of 15 found objects, and this can be anything, but think about how it can align with science and science processing skills on a deeper level. Compare the objects in your collection. So even if they're all the same objects, such as white stones, there'll be subtle differences and similarities to think about and compare. Can you see a sense of pattern in your collection, shading, similarities, differences, function, form, or texture? You need to notice the key points about your collection. Will they link to other ideas, materials, or allow you to think about something in a different way? So, you display, you gather and create a collection of at least 15 found objects. This can be anything, but think about how it can align with science and this criteria on a deeper level. Display your collection in an interesting way and include a photograph or photographs in your report. So this is a photograph of the whole collection, not separate images, although you can include a couple more images if you want to highlight particular features of your analysis. You compare the objects in your collection, even if they're all the same object, as I said before, such as all feathers. There'll be lots of differences to discuss. Oh, this is the same slide. Sorry, I'll just click through that. That's a bit silly. So at the end, you reflect on your collection all throughout. So this is probably more the conclusion. What have you learned from the experience? What would children learn? And how could this be integrated into a science curriculum for young children? You may choose which age group you target here, early childhood or primary. Okay, so I wouldn't go higher than primary, and I would keep it, in the limits of really what this course is about. So most of you are either early childhood or primary students, or not students, undergraduates. So what are the benefits of collecting everyday objects? So we really need you to think about this as well. And as always, reference your discussion with relevant readings and references from the unit and additional resources from your research. You also might find some useful references from prior courses that you've done, particularly those people who've done Discovering Science or Teaching with Science and Technology. Now, I just want to think about what an everyday experience is. It's something like taking a walk in the park or doing some gardening or walking to the shops. You just need to participate in a couple to collect your objects. These experiences might not be referred to in your essay, but you can reflect upon them in terms of size, shape, weight, texture, history, pattern, things that you've seen around you. And also an example of a found object that might align with science could be feathers. So initially you would think about the size, shape, colour, texture, weight. And then you think about how this links to science. So further studies could lead to an investigation of the types of birds in the local area. That's something you might do with children. You could look at environmental needs and things like that. You could look at flight and aerodynamics, obviously at a basic level for young children. You could investigate different colours related to courtship of birds and camouflage. They could lead then to investigating protection from the elements or predators. So I've done this in units before, but I do like this approach. It's see, think, wonder, and I've written and more. So in preparation for our collaboration session, I'd like you to start thinking about how you might analyse parts of your collection. We're going to look at a couple of images on the night and focus on one or two elements. And when we look at them, I want you to consider this thinking routine of see, think, wonder. So you look at the image. This is a great thing to do with children. What do you see? So you concretely describe what you can see, just physically, adjectives. What can you see in the picture? Nouns, everything you can see. Then, what does this make you think? So can you make inferences from that? You wonder where they came from or how they got there or what they're used for, what happened to them, why have they deteriorated? And next, what are you still wondering? So what information is missing or what would you like to know? And so for the purpose of our analysis and reflection of found objects, we also need to consider other senses such as touch, smell, and even sound is a good one too. So when you're looking at yours, you'll think about this a little more deeply. So for instance, you look at this picture and I would focus on one of these objects. I think, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Say the stones. If you look down at the bottom of these stones, there's 5 here, And they're all similar, but so you see 5 stones. Some are oval, some are round, some are small, some are large. If you were actually touching them, you would feel them. They are light, perhaps. Maybe they're from the beach and they're not actually stones. They have little holes in them. So you think, I wonder why they're all different shapes, or I wonder why they're different colours. And then what would you like to know about them? What are they? Do animals live inside them? Where did they come from? And why do they have those holes in them? And there's lots of interesting things you collect along the way. So this might be a little bit of inspiration for you. The beach is a great place to collect, you know, the garden, when you take your dog for a walk in the park. And there's always something interesting. And hopefully this will encourage you to have a closer look at your environment. Don't forget to look up. We don't want you pulling things off trees, but it's really good to have a good look around and take things in. So, science processing skills. So, to understand what these are is really essential for both assignment 2A and part 2B. Observing. So this is the most basic skill in science. Observations are made by using the 5 senses. Good observations are essential in learning the other science processing skills. So observation is something I do all the time with my preps. What do you see? Communicating. It's important to be able to share our experiences and understanding. For instance, this can be done with graphs, diagrams, maps, spoken word, and for young children, it's generally, illustrations and speaking. So having the language to articulate your ideas and develop language development. Classifying. This is a great one to do with little kids too. So after you make your observations, it's important to notice similarities, differences, and group objects according to purpose. You can do it according to size, shape, weight. So it's important to create order to help understand the number of objects, events, and living things in the world. So this could be based on size, colour, texture, etc. Inferring. An inference is an explanation based on observations, what you've seen. It's a link between what's observed and what you already know. So you can infer that something is hollow rather than solid. It's quite simple. Measuring. So measuring is important in collecting, comparing and interpreting data. It helps us classify and communicate with others. So it says here the metric system should be used to help understand the scientific world, but with young children it would be informal measurements. For instance, using balance scale to sort objects according to mass. Predicting. What do you think will happen? So a prediction is an educated guess based on good observations and inferences about an event or prior understandings. So you could predict if something might float or sink. So they're the science processing skills that we'll go back to again and again. So, presenting your collection, excuse me. Due to limitations on file size, you need to arrange your objects together and take one photograph of them. We need to see evidence of the collection in one place. You will lose marks if you submit a document of 15 separate photographs. So one main photograph and maybe 1 or 2 more to highlight some sections that you want to discuss in more detail. Here's an example of a prior student's collection. So you can see the waste materials here are tubes and things like that, which are quite interesting to discuss and utilise for science experiences. And the others are found objects. Some would have been found in the park, some at the beach. Now this is a lot of objects because you're lucky. This time you only have to collect 15. In all past teaching periods, they've actually had to collect 30. So it's 15 objects. There's a lot more here. But this is the way that this student has displayed their collection. Here's another one. They've numbered them. So when they've gone into the analysis in more detail, they've numbered their objects. So you can see most of these are found natural items with some waste material. I would keep the waste material to a minimum in a collection of 15 objects because it's actually much harder to discuss and analyse. And here's a collection of all one type of thing, feathers. It's quite beautiful, this one. But I do remember this student's analysis was really interesting, and they weren't limited, and they were able to include a really good discussion and analysis. And here's another one. So they've got the 2 photos here. Remember, you're only doing 15, but they've labelled them and numbered them. These slides will be available in our Padlet too. So writing the essay. So you've got your photograph. It says 30 here. I'm so sorry, it's 15. Essay format. So you have an introduction of approximately 150 words, where you include the benefits of providing children with learning experiences that incorporate materials easily found in the environment. Outline what the reader will find in the body of your essay. Now, this isn't exactly a traditional essay, but we do want an introduction, a body, and conclusion. So in the body, this is where you reflect upon the materials you've collected and how they could be analysed, used in classrooms to enrich scientific and other conceptual development. You also need to discuss your collection of everyday objects, link them to the science concepts from, have a look at the Australian curriculum here for this, and processing skills. Then you observe, analyse and reflect upon your collection, again aligning them to the building of children's scientific understandings. It's okay to have headings in this, unlike a traditional essay, to help organise your document if that suits you. Many students do. We're not going to tell you what headings to have because I love this assignment, but I know it can be a bit challenging to start off. But once you start and you sort out how you want to write about it, you'll work out what headings you want. And then you have a conclusion of about 150 words. And so you reiterate your key ideas and close the essay. So don't forget it's only 1,500 words, so be mindful of your word count. So you don't have to describe all 15 objects. You could group some to discuss, analyse and compare. So another approach to do this. You have your photographic display of collection. I think it's always good to have that first rather than at the end, as when we're marking them we like to see it and then read your essay. So you have your introduction, your body of your essay. So these are the types of headings you might want to use. You could divide your items into categories such as where they were found, beach, park, garden, rubbish, or alternatively the science categories of biology, chemistry, physics and environment. Whatever suits your collection, because everybody's collection will be different. So you give maybe a brief explanation of the categories in your introduction or under the photograph for clarity. Then include the following. It's probably easier to do this in groups of some sort. You will definitely need to come up with them. We can't give it to you. It's a fairly open-ended essay. It's very interesting that students present them in many different ways and they're always interesting and lovely to read. So you could have Group A. You know, you might have found them. That could be the beach. Group A, or stones, or rubbish. Observation. Where were the objects found and general observation of them, for instance, using your senses, look, feel, smell, etc. Comparisons, colour, size, texture. For example, seaweed, shells, seed pods. Then you analyse them. History. What lived in the shell? Where might it have come from? Link this to science through environmental studies. And why maybe shells are different colours? Could be their diet or the location. And then you do that with Group B, Group C, Group D, depending on how many groups you've got. Then your reflection, references, and an APA-style reference list at the end as always. Assignment criteria. So compilation, display, and observations of a collection of everyday found objects. Analysis and reflection of a collection of everyday found objects, and academic expression and referencing. All right, so marking for criteria 1, the compilation, display, and observations of a collection of everyday found objects. So to pass, you've got a collection of objects that's been gathered, documented with a photograph, and you've presented some understanding of the science processing skills. For a credit, you would have done the same, but you would have made more observations, a bit more in depth about patterns. Distinction, same, you'd have to do the pass and credit criteria, and your comparisons would show a deeper level of understanding of science processing skills. The display shows careful consideration, and the collection is aesthetically pleasing, and it cultivates young children's interest and curiosity in science. I would hope everybody's done this. A high distinction is all of those things, and you identify the alignment of the collection with science concepts and processing skills using a good range of diverse sources of citation. So criteria 1 focuses on the collection of objects and the consequent reflection analysis. You'll link this to the science processing skills such as observing, sorting, classifying, predicting, experimenting, communicating. This will all need to be linked with good references throughout. Criteria 2, analysis and reflection of a collection of everyday found objects. So to pass, your analysis and reflections are implied, so we can tell you how to go, and are aligned with an understanding of science and technology. A credit, you have to do that, and your analysis shows a depth of thinking and reflection about the collection and is supported with academic literature. A distinction, same as the 2 before, but demonstrates critical engagement with the ideas of collecting and science processing skills. A high distinction, you present an in-depth understanding of the alignment with everyday objects and building scientific understandings. So this is where you link your collection of everyday objects to the development of science understandings. So for instance, the way objects move depends on a variety of factors, including their size, shape. And so science involves exploring, observing the world using the senses. And link that back to the Australian curriculum and early years learning framework where possible. So we want to think about how children learn and how your collection could be integrated into the science curriculum to support this. Again, support it with references. Criteria 3, academic expression and referencing. This is the same for pretty much every unit all over Swinburne. So we expect you to proofread. It's really, really important, as I've said before, that you do put that effort into proofread. No matter how wonderful the content is, it's really hard to get past a submission with a lot of errors in it. Poor referencing, poor formatting. So whilst it's only worth 10%, please put a bit of effort into this. You need to definitely reference APA style, and we want you to, if Grammarly is quite a good online tool to help get rid of some basic errors, and I would get a friend to read it too. So start gathering objects now. Participate in the daily walk exercises and begin to make observations. Go to assignment 2A Q&A to ask your ELA any questions. Please put them on the board because I've had a couple of emails and they're actually fantastic questions but they're not on the discussion board. So it'd be nice, to have your answers there. Check out the Padlet in your Q&A assignment 2A, and this is where you'll find extra information, links to collaborates, and helpful hints. Just another thing, it's actually okay to use first person, particularly in the first part, as it's reflective. However, with academic writing, it is always better to write in third person, but for this essay, it is a little different than most academic submissions. If you do use first person at all, and I would say only in the first part, when you're discussing how you personally are connected to these objects, be careful if or when you're changing points of view within your writing, as it can become so confusing for the reader. Third person is generally considered to be more academic, and I would usually recommend this. But for this assessment, you may write in whatever style suits the task. The key is to be aware of changes in tense and using correct and consistent grammar throughout. So be confident in your decision. Trust your writing. My advice is to reread or read your essay aloud as part of your proofreading, and this will give you a good idea of how it might read to an audience. Okay, sorry, thanks for everything, and we'll see you at the live Collaborate. Don't forget to put your questions up.